Yeah, we're good.
Recording. Okay. You're on.
Got everyone's attention, please? We can get started. Welcome everyone to the Paper Tigers Book Club event. The lecture series continues here this evening, March 27th, 2013. I am Doug Warren, ex-Foundation co-director, one of the founders of the Paper Tigers lecture series. Thank you all for coming out and joining us tonight. Normally, we talk about books and in the lectures we're involved in history, biography, economy, economics, things like that. Much more serious topics than what you would think would be with a sports topic. But tonight we're very, very excited to have our first discussion evolving around the world of sports. And our speaker, which I'm going to introduce here shortly, this I want to read a little excerpt from the back of his book here. The book is entitled Unlikely Saviors, Realizing the Positive Impact Amateur and Professional Athletes Can Have on Society Through Philanthropy. It is no question that athletes are arguably some of society's most respected, highly regarded, and sometimes controversial individuals. In this book, Lindsay Huddleston explores how athletes can use the admiration and notoriety they receive as a platform to have a significant impact on many of society's ills. And in this book, Lindsay interviews, the interviews Lindsay conducts range from former NBA and Fab Five members Jalen Rose and Jimmy King, MSU Spartan legend Greg Special K. Kelser, and championship coaches and college All-American athletes. And Lindsay is going to talk about a lot of these interactions and interviews and things he's learned, and he's going to share those with us tonight. He likes to highlight specific professional athletes, charitable foundations, and other sports-related philanthropic organizations. And this book is a valuable resource to be used by everyone from the team coach to the team captain, varsity amateur player to veteran professional player, soccer moms to the single mom, and community activist to charitable foundation. Because unlike sports and philanthropy, everybody wins. A little background on Mr. Huddleston. He is the founder and CEO of the Huddleston Consulting Group, LLC, which provides consulting and motivational speaking to for-profit and non-profit organizations throughout the United States. Lindsay's philanthropic efforts, also include hosting the annual Huddleston Hole-in-One charity golf outing.
We knew you'd catch it.
Yeah, thank you for not correcting me. I figured it out. So, for more information, go to lindsayhuddleston.com. And without further ado, please, everybody, give a warm welcome to Mr. Lindsay Huddleston.
Great. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm so happy to be here. If I keep looking at my notes, I can walk away missing the conference, so forgive me for that. To the foundation, the title itself, Paper Tigers, and if you research that, it just gives me great honor to be able to stand here and be involved in this kind of discussion. And I think that whole Paper Tigers piece is going to be inspiring to be able to be on this type of platform and be considered in this kind of conversation. To Doug, thank you for the great introduction. Doug warmed me up earlier today. I was fortunate enough to be on the Drive show with Jack Elbley. We had a great conversation earlier, and I appreciate him and all the work he's doing. I will take some personal privilege to acknowledge a few people who are here based on my personal invitation. I want to thank my good friend Lewis Sims for coming on out. A very well-read individual. I can remember us handing books to Mansfield, who used to be at Kazachek's, a Kazachek staple, but I always enjoyed our conversation, just, having fun, but the core of him taking his life experience and sharing that to me has been very impactful. So seeing you and inviting you was purposeful. So I appreciate you coming out, Lewis, and I appreciate all your support. Apache, young man you guys know, his invitation is what got me here. I had the pleasure of meeting him more than a decade ago when I moved here from Detroit to work with Governor Granholm's office. And a lot of words probably can describe him, but what I'm appreciative of about Apache is his purposeful consciousness. His purposeful consciousness. His presence alone challenges people, and I think that's healthy. Couldn't have two Apachus, that's too much for you. That's too much. That's too much. Those who don't know. But what I appreciate about you is that I can be in your presence and be thankful that I've well thought out what I'm doing in my life, because I know you're going to ask me, what do you think about that? He's not going to hit you over the head with all his volumes of information he's read. Now, you know, a brother is serious. If he gives you a book and say, you got to talk to me before you read it. And that's what he did this evening. But I just really want to take this moment to give you personal praise. Thank you for getting me out here. Thank you for your commitment to making things better. And I think you're an excellent ambassador for this organization. I see my good friend Mark Dotson. Thank you for coming here. Mark, you don't even know the kind of impact you've had on me being here. You didn't know this. You and your group of married men, and I say it in a positive way, who return to the Michigan State High School Athletic Championship every year. I got caught up in that one year, 2 years ago. So by being there with that group of guys out watching these high school players, that's when the idea for the book came. So Mark, I have to give you credit. I won't give you royalties, but I will give you credit on what took place. And all that. Thanks for coming. And now I will take some serious personal privilege to make one more introduction and acknowledgement. The gentleman who's here with me today is my father-in-law, Mr. David Simpson. And to this great group, thank you. He deserves it. And to this well-read group of individuals, there's one word I want to talk about, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, that I think is very overly used in the English vernacular. The word good. The word good is extremely overly used. Something is good, this and that. But good is defined as morally correct. That's a strong statement. And I want to say that my father-in-law is a good man. So to have the opportunity to be your bracket buddy when we're watching the game, so you know he's a good guy if I take him with me to my sporting events. With all due respect to my dad who's in Detroit, but this is my guy right here. My road dog, if you will, my videographer, my security detail tonight. But just a good man and a good example for me as a father and a husband. And I want to take this moment to give him his roses while he can smell them. And I thank you guys for being part of it. So that to you, Dave, you're an awesome dude, and I appreciate you, man. Okay, with that, thank you guys. When I got the invitation, of course, like all speakers, I want to get the background and find out where was I coming, what was I doing. And when Doug and Apache was telling me about some of the books that have been discussed before, I felt good. But I knew this was going to be unique, as Doug said, having a sports theme going on. Post-war Detroit discussions. I'm a native Detroit, and of course I can appreciate that discussion. Dr. King's book, Bearing the Cross. I hear someone to talk about that. Apache put me on to Zupatra, the Mexican revolutionary, and I did some great studies about him and all the things he was doing in 1911 and beyond. And also the book, The Origins of the Urban Crisis. So one may say, well, where does sports fit into this? But at the end of the day, this is part of the discussion as it relates to the sociological and anthropological impact that we can have on each other and make things better. All these books dealt with people and entities that talked about change. This group is committed to change. All you individuals, you all are conscious of that. So I'm very proud to feel in good company and feel very validated and feel that I have something that's concrete to offer. As you notice in Doug's introduction, one word he said, this is also for the community activists. We need to find a new way to impact the next generation. And I think our athletes have the key. So I thank you guys for indulging me. So let's talk about the book. I want to read the book's dedication. And I think that's valid. And that gives you more insight to where I was, what my thought is, and what I'm trying to do. It says this book is dedicated to our first child who will be entering the world this year. Well, she's here. Madeline, and she's here. And the amazing women in my life, including my loving and supportive wife, Rachel, my strong and intelligent mother, Patricia Jackson, and my wise and caring grandmother, the late Madeline Bryant. So as you can see, I named my daughter after my grandmother. So to bring those full circle, who's not in here is my brother who passed. He just passed, going on a year next week. And that was my hoop buddy. We played ball together, and it would only be appropriate that if I wrote this book later, he would be acknowledged. So I'm fine, but I just want to be able to acknowledge someone who's important too. So you can get an idea of what's important to me, and family is first among all things. So that was the story. And as Doug talked about the background of the book, and I mentioned with Dot and me going to the Michigan High School Athletic Championship game, which I found out is like a pilgrimage for men for 20, 30 years on end. I didn't know that. You know, you hear guys coming with their sons, and you know, we're going to the games and whatnot. So what happened for me is at the time I was in corporate America. I worked for a company that Apache wasn't fond of called Walmart. I was a corporate lobbyist there. Prior to that, I was with Governor Granholm's administration and was a lobbyist, her lobbyist, if you will, as her deputy director for legislative affairs. So fast forward to Walmart, you know, corporate job, traveling the country, and as I was talking just earlier, we were really trying to get into the urban community. Walmart, originally a rural company that was trying to expand and compete with the smaller Family Dollars and all those companies and whatnot. So now I'm at the game, enjoying the game as a sports fan, because I played in high school and I love ball, and probably play later on this week. And I'm witnessing the swagger that these high school athletes had. They had NBA swagger. You guys know what I mean when you watch that, or when you watch the NCAA tournament. And I'm sitting down, and there's a group, a very diverse group, just like this group here. And they knew everything about the basketball player. Knew everything about David Simpson. I know where he goes to high school at, where he's going to college at, about his family. I'm just hearing this conversation. I'm amazed. That game is over. I changed seats, sit somewhere else. It's the same thing. And I thought to myself, if these young people had access to the resources that I had, they can make a major impact. And at the time, I touched probably about $3 million in foundation money, not spread out across the country. What I was saying earlier is, this wasn't my first experience working with athletes. When Walmart was really working hard to make an impact in Los Angeles, for example, I was able to make a contact with Jason Richardson, Michigan State alum, doing some great things in the NBA. He's a great philanthropist. Doug, I'm hanging out with you too long, man. And he had his Man Up Forum. And it started in Saginaw, but it's a national, opportunity. And he was going to be in Los Angeles during the All-Star game a couple years ago. So I made a relationship happen, and we were fortunate enough to be able to support him and give him $50,000 for his foundation. So that was a great thing. But it showed me that, wow, a Fortune 1 corporation would be willing to spend money to support an athlete to get their goals across. So now I start making that connection, like, okay, I can see how this can happen. And we see with the NCAA and all the money that's being spent. So I knew that there could be an impact. But somebody told me while I was preparing to write the book that you want to be able to do more. You want to be able to take this beyond just a book. And that's when I came up with the idea of the Unlikely Savior Philanthropic Project. And that goal is to go to middle schools, high schools, and colleges, and even connect with professional teams, but to promote philanthropy through sports. And it's going really well. I'll be at Lansing Community College later this year, working on some things down at Wayne State. But the challenge you find is just like in any educational situation, there are limited resources. And as a consultant, I consider myself to be of much value. And what I realize is the people I want to serve can't afford me. Can't afford my fair market value. So I end up pricing myself out. But I went back to that corporate strategy and said, let's allow the corporations to fund this type of project. And if it's not a corporation, it could be a nonprofit, because as I'll say later when we talk about the impact that Ego has on this, both can benefit. So now I'm very proud to say that, not that I haven't gotten validation before, but I just received a federal grant to be able to use the philanthropic project to promote health and wellness to middle school students. So right now I'll be on the road tomorrow in Detroit, 2 middle schools working there, and those middle school athletes through a United States Department of Agriculture grant will be promoting health and wellness to their classmates, because they have that platform, they have that stature. So if anything is letting me know I'm on the right road, and what I found out in this health and wellness piece, that the juvenile diabetes issue is overwhelming and amazing. When you compare this sedentary, generation, texting and tweeting, video games instead of running outside and playing, Dave would tell me he was told that he couldn't come in the house until, it was time to come in the house, as opposed to being in the house, can't get out. And there's such an alarming rate of juvenile diabetes. So there is going to be an issue going forward. And I see a way to be able to impact that, going back to that corporate model of future drug companies, et cetera, being able to promote this information that can help these young people while still getting a return on their investment. Because say what you want, we're in a capitalistic society, and if I'm going to make an investment, I want a return on that. So I get that, and we're getting a good response with that. So I want to let you know where we're at, and that grant is taking place, and I'm in the process of writing another grant for fiscal year 2014, and we're hoping that can be successful so we can extend that. So keep us in your prayers for that so we can keep that going. I mentioned Lansing Community College, and mid-July I'll be speaking to the athletes as they return and for their orientation. And just like to my point of people not having the resources, well, nonprofits are all about making money to supply their needs. So I look at the nonprofits as becoming strategic partners. And in this case, we're partnering with Volunteers of America, specifically this Lansing location, to be able to connect them with the athletes at Lansing Community College and hopefully at Michigan State University. And I found a very interesting thing when I visited there the other day. I had a great tour by Patrick, the CEO there. We were talking about the kitchen and what the kitchen does and how many people it provides for and all the great things. He said all of his donations of food allow things to happen. And this is just an interesting fact. His cash challenges, what he needs cash for, you would never know. He needs money for tinfoil, gloves, and hair nets, and those to-go cartons. Now that's not a big ask, because we take that for granted. We can all go home and pull a tinfoil out of the cupboard, make an impact. But then when you switch that to college athletes, who by nature just don't have any money and shouldn't have any money, that's another conversation, right?
Yeah.
But if you get on a campus and you say, hey, we're doing a tinfoil drive for Volunteers of America, you can meet that measure. Those athletes can make an impact like that. Because their classmates can go home and pull from the cupboard, they can go buy it. So that's the way we can make a real impact. That's a very small thing, and I'm really excited about those type of opportunities. And I think everyone can be served with that going forward, and that's just an example. Now, it's interesting when I was finishing the book, when I was in corporate America, I started stepping into the consulting world as a pro bono consultant because I didn't want to have any conflict of interest and whatnot. And a very good friend of mine, Ebony Jones, a good friend growing up, I call her my big sister. She had started a nonprofit, so I went down to support her in Detroit. And there was a young man there, Kevin, a good friend, Kevin, was giving a financial literacy piece. And I had a eureka moment. I said, I got to stop the presses. Because how can I expect young people to be charitable and philanthropic if they don't have the financial capability to understand how to manage their money? Then the next thing I said, well, how can I expect them to be able to manage money if they don't have the basic skills, the soft skills to get the job, to get the money, to give it away? So I had to really be real. Do I just keep going to print and just go, or just stop and try to figure this out? And the last part I mentioned about the workforce development piece, that when I was at Walmart, that was a huge issue that we had at the time. For example, we were in the process of trying to get into DC, and some unnamed elected officials there, and I'm not with the company anymore, so I can say whatever I say, and I'm here with the paper tiger, I can say a whole lot of stuff. So they said, we want you to hire hundreds of people from our community, but they're not here. They're here, but they're not here. Because as we all know, the soft skill and the life skill challenge is a major deficit for so many people. So now, I say, it's a bigger thing now. It's not just sports. And thankfully I have an audience like this that I can break this down a little bit more. But we have an opportunity to impact people on a complete social and economic status. Because now, and what I'm doing next and what I'm leading up to is the next thing I'm doing in my life and the next chapter in my life is Direct Impact Programs Incorporated. Creating a nonprofit that will have the Unlikely Savior Philanthropic Project that focuses on athletes promoting charity, but also the Next Generation Life Skill Training Program, which is what I do, some life skill training I've done in Detroit and whatnot. So now, along with being able to get athletes to promote charity, and as we know, health and wellness, and maybe to another subsection, the juvenile diabetes push, we also have an opportunity to teach soft skills, to be able to tell them about what's important. And the basis of that is, as I'm working on my second book, which can be another conversation hopefully in a year's time, and that book is called No Effort, No Entry, Sharing Soft Skills for a Hard Life. The reality is that a year or so ago, or in 2011, there was a group of corporate individuals that got together. Now I'm digressing, but it's all part of the same story. And they were talking about what the challenges were in hiring. They said that some 600,000 jobs went unfilled in the manufacturing sectors and things like that. And people assume that the reason that happened was because of shortages in STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math. We hear that all the time. But these corporate folks looked around the room and they said, no, it's not that. They said, we just need somebody who knows how to answer a phone. We need somebody who can show up to work on time. Somebody who can pass a drug test, et cetera, et cetera. So there's an extreme soft skills deficiency. So I see that as being another opportunity, especially as it relates to our athletes, because at the end of the day, those are some of the most highly recruited individuals as it relates to job opportunities. You see the Hertz commercial or Enterprise, they talk about we have so many NCAA athletes on our staff. I mean, because there's a science to that as well. Because they said the athletes can do a better job because of the discipline they've received, because of experience, exposure, etc. So we're really trying to put all those things together. And my goal going into next year is to take things up, complete another level, that is, to be able to have this type of program to impact our young people, whether it's in the urban area or the rural community. So I want to talk about that. In my book, I also talk about the 10 steps to philanthropy, and I'll make sure to share that with you before we go. Because at the end of the day, I want to let these young people know that you can become a philanthropist. And the greatest tool they have is Google. You can Google anything. You can get Google to find out directions, make a bomb, unfortunately, or find out who you can help. So with Google and doing some research to talk about the things that they can go through and they can do to become philanthropists themselves. So they can either hear my presentation, go across the street to Volunteers of America and do some great things, or say, you know what, my family has really been impacted by cancer. My family has been really impacted by juvenile diabetes. There's some things I want to work on, and we can empower these young people to get out here and start being a little bit more charitable. Also, if you notice on the back of the book, there's a crest. And that crest I've actually taken, and it says on top, philanthropy is love. Philanthropy is love. And it's funny how that came about. I was working on some things, and I think it only had a maximum of so many characters I can put in. But when I got locked into this, I said that's wonderful, because I would consider philanthropy being God, and God is love. So it's a very positive expression. And underneath it talks about the Book of Philanthropic Project. So I'm taking that logo and branding that to some material, includes shirts and sweatshirts. And the next goal is to have USA Unlikely Savior apparel. So all these young people that are out here doing some philanthropic things, they can be branded with this. There's so many other images going on that they see, but I want people to be able to say, oh, that kid is doing some good things. And it'd be an honor for them to be able to wear that Unlikely Savior letterman, or that Unlikely Savior golf shirt or something like that. So that's just giving me some more ideas of where I'm going with this and going forward. So let's talk about the book, and waiting for Doug to give me the high sign one way or the other, because I want to make sure we can have some dialogue, but I want to be able to get through these things. I'm staying on target. Who's in the book? I have everyone from Jalen Rose, Jimmy King, TJ Dudley, to Greg Kelser. I did some work with Endowment Sue, so I talked about that. Was able to, been a great fan of Steve Smith, and we talked about him on the show earlier. But Jalen Rose was my first interview. And I always tell this story. I didn't know any of these athletes beforehand. I consider myself a man about town, being very politically connected, but I didn't know the athletes. And that's a very hard nut to crack, in the sense that they're so insulated. They're so public, but there's so many layers around them to get to them. Jalen and I had been at a golf outing together, and we had laughed and joked, because everyone was hanging out, but I didn't know him. So what I did is, I knew I wanted to have him in the book because of all the great things he was doing in Detroit, specifically the school that he started. So I went to Jalen's golf outing 2 years ago. That was in Ann Arbor. And I showed up and I saw him. I said, hey, Jalen, man, I want to have you in my book. I'm writing a book about athletes and charity. He said, yeah, man, just give me a call. I'm like, man, I don't know you like that. I don't have your number. Give you a call. ESPN, NBA, and all. But I tell the young people when I speak, and I'm also a motivational speaker, and I tell them that when you have a plan and a purpose, the world will make a way for you. So I happened to be with Steve Smith, ironically, in this foursome. We were going down one fairway, and Jalen and his crew was coming up the next one. I said, well, no problem. I'll just catch Jalen at the clubhouse. Well, I get to the clubhouse, I go looking for him. He's gone. He caught the red eye back to California. He had to shoot for ESPN. But I was able to talk to some of his folks, and a couple days later, he's calling me on the cell phone. We talked for more than an hour. His documentary had just came out, so he had talked about that. But he also talked about a lot of other things, and it was just awesome. And, you can imagine, as a first-time author, I just got off the phone with Jalen Rose, who did my first interview. So I'm like, I had the president next. I'm like, it's not going to be a problem. But actually, it kind of went down after that, but I shouldn't say down. It wasn't to the expectation that I had, because I still had some great people in the book. Jimmy King. Oh, man, Jimmy was part of 5'5". Jimmy, just like Jay did, made some excellent comments. But Jimmy's comments I really use when I talk to the college athletes. Because Jimmy made it a point, and we were talking about this earlier. He said, you guys all focus on being pros. He said, one thing he says that when he talks to young people, he said, well, in most cases, I'm the only pro in the room. And that's serious, because you talk about the numbers. Then he says, your second job, your second career is more important than your first career. I think these young people fail to realize that. Well, if I can make it to the pros, I'll be fine. And what I do is when I go speak to athletes, instead of saying, hey, you got a 1 in a million chance to make it, I said, no. I said, everyone close your eyes. I said, this is your fantasy today. I said, close your eyes, and I want you to imagine being a professional athlete. And they like that. I said, now open your eyes. I said, okay, now we got that out the way. Now you're a pro. Now that's done. And that's unique because they're being told so long you can't do it, so they get this, singular drive. Who's going to be a pro? And that's their whole focus. Well, you take that out of the equation and say, okay, you're a pro now. Now what? You're going to be done at 25, maybe 30. You got 60 plus years to live. What are you going to be doing with your life? And that changes the conversation. Because now they can't look at me as a speaker and have issue with me, thinking about you, have issue with me or whatnot, or say you're trying to hold me back. I'm like, no, I'm with you. So what are you going to do next? And that changed the conversation. Jimmy was really good at bringing that out. But what really turns people's mind is a discussion on ego. Because, as I was talking earlier, T.J. Duncan said this in the book. He said since he was 8 years old, he was told he was going to be a pro. Now, in this particular case, he had a pro in his family with his brother and whatnot, but that's the same thing. Kids are told from Pop Warner, hey, you're going to be a pro, you're going to be the best. And Jimmy made a good point. If you don't believe you're the best, why should anyone else? So you have to kind of take on that attitude. And that's great for those who make it, or for those who come close to making it. And as an aside, look at the 68 teams that are playing, or that have played for the NCAA. How many of those guys come on to the NBA? If you want to do something good, look at the NBA, the McDonald's All-American game when they do a flashback. They do a flashback, and it's the Kevin Garnett's and the Carmelo Anthony's and Dwayne Wade's. And look at the other 20 guys out there playing. You don't see any of those guys. So that's telling you right there that even the best of the best, the highest touted kids throughout the country, throughout the land, don't make it to the next level. So, with that, what are you going to do when the cheering stops? And I had a good friend who was part of the Detroit Tigers, and he got a copy of the book, and he read it, and the next day I saw him, and I never forget this, he had that 1,000-yard stare. He said, man, when I got cut from the Tigers, I didn't know who I was. Now that's what's going on. You got some people got some serious issues going on because their identity was wrapped up in one thing. Now here's the benefit. If we connect these individuals with a nonprofit or a charitable cause, they have an elevator pitch now that's worth saying. I don't care who you are, human nature is you want to feel good about who you are and what you got going on. We practice that. What do you got going on? I'm doing this, this, and that. I always use the example that the state of Alabama doesn't have any professional teams. But you can argue that the University of Alabama football is a professional team, right?
Yeah.
So technically they don't have any professional teams. However, let's take this room. And I know you guys would be supportive of me, but however, if it was me standing here and possibly the kicker from the 2010 National Championship team with the University of Alabama, and they said, do you want to hear this guy speak or this guy? The masses are going to go in that room just because of his affiliation. So he's going to always have a platform. That person who had that Michigan State experience is going to always have a platform. So they can get an opportunity to be able to keep their ego stroked, because that is human nature. You're the man, you're the man, you're the man, but no one comes to you when that last buzzer goes on. That last ball is that last inning and play and say, okay, David, career's over, let me help you transition. You're done. And you're left out there to have this facade now. Be absolutely sure, without any clinical testing, that there is a strong connection between alcoholism, drug abuse, violence, to people who have had these unresolved issues. Now, when we talk about making an impact, post-war Detroit, bearing the cross, these are some issues that our young people out here are going to be carrying. And it's going to be perpetuated because these guys become coaches, these guys become parents, and they put the same thing on their kid. And like, if you don't make it to the next level, you're unsuccessful. We need to let our kids know that you're successful no matter what. I'm thankful that I came up in a household like that. I'll tell a quick story about my mom, who I love to death. I would say, Mom, when I grew up, I want to work on an ice cream truck. You know, kids love ice cream. She would say, no, baby, you want to own the company. So I had that kind of love and support in the household with my mother and my grandmother and my neighborhood and my dad and all those type of things. But we got all these other unresolved issues with these people out here that's going on. Go down a little bit more, full circle, Greg Kelser. I missed him. He was on the top end of the show today, the drive with Jack Evelyn. I'm thankful that I was able to be on the show. Greg Kelser, we are alums of the same high school, Detroit, Henry Ford High School. Greg had an awesome career here at Michigan State. He's doing some great things now. He started a vending company business in the school when I was a senior in high school and did a great thing. He gave a scholarship back. He was giving back. I got one of those $1,000 scholarships 20 years ago to the day. When I got in corporate America, I got a phone call from someone saying, hey, you know, Greg Kelser is doing this camp. He needs some help. Can you help him? I bent over backwards to give him that $1,000 back. And we talked about that in the interview, but that was a full circle piece. So what happened here? We had a professional athlete, transition well, helped the kid out, and I was able to return the favor 20 years later. So there is a correlation, and we can see that happening. TJ Duckett. Oh, I can't tell you about the great thing TJ is doing. TJ made me aware of one thing, one simple fact about how, and we talked about this on the show this morning, this afternoon, how many athletes have schools. And you would think of all this money these professional athletes get, baseball, basketball, football. Let's even count the overseas players. How many have schools? It's TJ Duckett, and I won't even make it an athlete conversation, I'll make it a celebrity conversation. TJ Duckett, George Gervin, the Admiral David Robinson, my friend out in Andre Agassi out in Las Vegas, and one more name.